We have quite a few things to get through today. First, we will just talk about the new GAMSAT, how it will be experienced in 2024. It's going to be a bit different than in past years, very different from many years ago. And so we'll just talk about that and get some ideas and strategies in your mind. And hopefully it will, you will change the way you're preparing for the exam over the next few months, because you want to direct your preparation specific to the exam that you're going to experience. And then after that, we will just, as always, anytime we get together, we're always going to do some practice questions. So we'll do some practice questions in each of the three sections. Just a handful of practice questions, just to to get your feet wet, and to also to help you orient the way you're studying for this exam. Okay, so the first thing is, of course, you're in the next 15 minutes. In the next 15 minutes, actually, do most people hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so perhaps there are some people who haven't put their speakers on or something like that. I'm not alone. G is here and Viv as well. So if G or Viv, if you can put something in the chat to help people figure out how to get their audio working, or yes, you can also G or Viv, you can give the YouTube live link, and perhaps that'll be easier for them. Okay, so yes, so let's get to some of the main things. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to be saying some things that a lot of you know already, and you're going to be a little bit bored with some of the things that you know already. Of course, that's going to happen because everybody is coming from a different background with different experience and so on. But don't worry, we'll get to your level. We'll either get you some good practice questions, or at least some things that you have to think about, and also some things that you might not have considered about the exam coming up. So yes, the 2024 GAMSAT, of course, what the exam is. It's the Graduate Medical School Admissions Test, and you know that it's for to get into medical school or allied healthcare. So there's veterinary school, there's all kinds of other programs, including dentistry, et cetera, that you can use the exam for. And the exam has been going on in March and September for decades, but there's a significant change in 2024 that has never happened before. And in fact, most of you are familiar with these expressions as Section 1, Section 2, and then Section 3 as being the three sections of the exam, with Section 1 being reasoning in humanities and social sciences, and Section 2 being written communication, which is the two essays. And then Section 3 is reasoning in biological and physical sciences, which is the four basic sciences. So most of you are familiar with that. Well, the 2024 GAMSAT guide from ACER doesn't use these expressions at all anymore. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, which have been used for decades. And they've changed it because the first section in the 2024 exam is going to be Section 2. What? So that's why they can't continue to use Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, because the first section is going to be written communication, and it will be on a separate day. So there's going to be two separate exam windows that all students will need to sit. In order to complete the exam, you must attend those two separate exam windows. So the first window for the March exam is going to be 9 and 10. So that's March 9 and 10, and that's written communication. Now, the good thing is that you're going to have a lot of flexibility in order to schedule the exam for written communication because you're sitting it at home. So this is the first time since the pandemic that any part of the test will be online proctor for all students. You see, ACER came up with a rule last year and a half ago where students who live far from a test center, 3 hours or more from a test center, they can choose to sit GAMSAT online at home or in a quiet location, whatever. So they developed that program. It was there, but now it's for all students who for written communication. So that's a 65-minute test, and all students will be sitting at March 9, 10 for the March exam, or if you're sitting the exam in September, then it would be August 31st and September 1st. So it'll be those 2 days, which will be the window to be able to sit with an online proctor. And let me tell you, an online proctor is not like any uni exams. It's not that kind of experience, which is, let's say, semi-professional at best. The online proctor that ACER has been using since the onset of the pandemic is ProctorU, and they have some videos and written materials and so on that will take you through the process. But just so you know, just so you have a basic idea, when you're sitting this exam at home, the real exam written communication at home, prior to the exam starting, there's going to be all kinds of procedures, and they're going to take over your browser. Obviously, they're going to make sure you don't have another screen. They're going to make sure you don't have anything else on your desk except for acceptable materials, which we will talk about. They're going to make sure that they want to see the walls. They want to see all the walls. They want to see the door. Where's the exit door? They prefer if the exit door is at your back. And they want you to have a mirror. So you need a mirror or a reflecting device in order for them to be able to see around your monitor to make sure that you don't have any Post-it notes or stickies or whatever. So there's a number of security procedures, but it goes much further than that. Your testing experience is recorded. Both, obviously your face, your ID will be imaged, and then the experience is recorded, and they have all kinds of AI generated techniques like observing how your eyes are moving during the test. Is it natural? Is it unnatural? Is it suggesting something's going on? So, they have a lot of things like that. Obviously, audio, they're going to be hearing as well, and looking for any signs of something that's occurring that's untoward. Of course, that's no way to start your medical career by cheating anyway, but there are a number of things in place in order to make it as low risk as possible, and they still catch people every year. Okay, so that's just to have in mind that that's the one section of the exam. So that's March 9, 10. That's written communication, no longer called section 2. It is the first section. Now comes the next set. The next set of dates is March 22 to 27, or for if you're sitting the exam in September, it's the 13th to the 15th. And this is these two sections. So it's going to be reasoning and humanities and social sciences, which ACER sometimes just calls humanities. It's not a good word for this section because it leaves out too much. But and then there's also this section. You're going to get a 20-minute break between these two. So you get a 20-minute break. It's long because you're going to be sitting for 4 hours and 10 minutes, plus the security measures is going to be 1 or 2 hours. It's tough with only a 20-minute break. Furthermore, one group starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, finishes around 2. The other group starts around 2:30 in the afternoon, finishes around 8:30 at night. So those are strange times, because from 8 till 2, it's going over lunch, but you don't have a real hour of lunch, but you will have 20 minutes. You got to pack that lunch. You don't want to be standing in a line up for anything. You've got to pack a very boring lunch that you're very used to, and you know how your body responds to it in order to optimize your concentration and so on. And you have to choose the time of day that you concentrate best. Do you concentrate best in the morning, in the afternoon? And when you're doing your preparation and you're doing practice tests, you want to practice exactly according to the schedule that you have. If you're going to sit these 2 sections in the morning, that's how you use your practice tests. If you're going to do them in the afternoon, going into the evening, because it's going as late as 8:30, then that's the way you practice your tests. You want to emulate the experience as much as possible. And by the way, that also includes for the written communications section. For that 65 minutes, if you normally prepare your essays, in some back room in your basement, and that's normally where you practice your essays, that's where you should sit the real test. Because, there's research to suggest that wherever you encode information is the likelihood of optimally performing is improved. It's sort of like a home court advantage, except obviously there's no fans cheering you on. A question, did you say you can't have your laptop with an external screen plugged in? That's correct. You cannot have 2 screens. They will not accept that you have 2 screens because you understand they're trying to control your browser and see everything that's happening on your browser. And if you have another screen, there's the potential that you have some information on that other screen. So, and of course, set yourself up, because even if you don't have the ideal computer for to sit the exam at home, one of your friends does, or some family member or somebody does, and you want to practice on that computer, and then you want to sit the real exam, but you want to make the situation optimal. You don't want to have a 13-inch screen for the exam. It's not that it's not permitted, but it unless you're extremely experienced and comfortable with that, you want to have something optimal. So bigger is better. And I can't comment about using an external keyboard. I can't comment about that. They usually do not want any extra devices connected, but I cannot comment precisely about external keyboard. Okay, next thing I wanted to mention. Okay, so we talked about the online proctor, the test center, and now what are you going to bring? You can bring a bottled water, no labels, clear bottled water with no labels. You can't bring food into the exam room. Not even a lolly, no candy, nuts, nothing. Unless you apply for special, circumstances, and you need a doctor's note and stuff like that. So, you should practice that way. So if you're used to, sitting practice tests, with some candy and whatever, then, you're not simulating the true experience. So you want to stick as close to the true experience as possible in order to get your mind and your body in form for the test. You'll also obviously bring your ID, and now the issue of scratch paper. So during the exam, this is what you're allowed. You're allowed 2 A4 sheets of scratch paper for each of these 3 sections. So 2 sheets for written communication, which you'll be sitting first, and you're allowed 2 sheets for section 1, and then those 2 sheets will be destroyed, and all sheets will be destroyed after the exam, and then 2 sheets for reasoning in biological and physical sciences. So in fact, by the way, I'm just going to call this first section humanities, just as short form for it, and this will be just science, short form for it. So you have options. You can use A4 paper, which will be supplied to you if you go to the test center. You will get free A4 paper for the hundreds of dollars or euros or pounds that you paid. You'll get those 2 sheets of A4 paper, but you have the option to use a whiteboard. So you know what, you can go to one of those office stores or whatever, and they sell those whiteboards with an erasable marker. And the whiteboard has a maximum size of 30 by 25 centimeters you would have to choose. And you can use that for each of the 3 sections. Whether or not you're at home or in the test center, you can bring a whiteboard. And if you can't find the whiteboard of your choice, for the first time ever, just Acer has made it so that you can take an A4 sheet of paper, laminate it, and bring that in as a replacement instead of a whiteboard. You can't use whiteboard and paper. You're choosing one of the 2. Now, my opinion on this, don't take a whiteboard, because particularly for section 3. Section 3, you will definitely, if you're doing well, you will have some equations that you'll be manipulating, that will have various steps involved. And then you will have organic chemistry, in which typically you will be drawing some molecules. And so there are a number of things that you may want to go back to. When you have 2 A4 paper, you're using recto verso, so you've got both sides that you're able to use. That's a lot of terrain that you have available to yourself. And so that's much better than you worked out some organic, and then you're going to erase it on your whiteboard and then do some physics. And then later, if you have extra time, you can't easily go through your work. And in fact, one of the things I'll recommend about your A4 paper is that when you're working on a problem, like say you're working on question number 3, and you do your work, always cordon off that area. And then you're working on 16, then you work in that, and then you cordon it off. Because one of the worst things is when you are working on something and it bleeds into something else, and just because one letter here or there, one number here or there was misinterpreted, you end up just creating chaos. So cordon off things, and something that you're going to hear me say in tutorials as we go through in the weeks and months to come is anytime you have an opposite of an opposite type question, you're going to see this is a style Acer has, in which standard approach for professors is to have the not or cannot, or except, sometimes they have it, but sometimes Acer will do a double negative. So these are questions. It's good to write down the question number, write the letters, and then assess each letter separately as to true or false statement. And then either put 3 X's and 1 check, or 3 checks and 1 X's. But basically it's like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the others. And so that's how you could determine your answer. This might sound ambiguous right now, but as you do a lot of practice questions, it will become more obvious. Can you write in pencil and eraser on your scratch paper, or pen only? You can use pencil and eraser on the scratch paper. It will be destroyed later anyway. But yes, you're allowed to bring pencil, pen, and eraser, and what's that called? The thing that makes pencils sharp, pencil sharpener. You're allowed to bring as well. Okay, so I think that's it about your scratch paper. Okay, another thing, people are sometimes that don't know about, or they don't they're not aware of, is some issues with regards to the questions, the practice questions that you're going to be exposed to. So there are three categories of practice questions. There are questions that are test questions. I know that's strange. Oh, there are test questions on the test. Well, yes, there are. But some people call these trial questions. So these are, questions that they're not sure if they should be used, or they're trying to see how people respond to this question because they might be used in the future. So usually it's a small number, but there are always test questions or trial questions on a standardized exam. It's normal. It's not just a GAMSAT. But the important thing for you to know is these are not scored, and it underlines the importance of maintaining timing during the exam. Never should you be spending 5 minutes on a question. It works out that for the science section, you have about 2 minutes per question. And for the humanities section, you have 1.6 minutes per question. Now, those are numbers that you're just going to have to live with and grow and think about a lot. And then when you're practicing, once you've done the basics, you have the foundational knowledge, and then you start doing practice questions, then you start timing yourself. And then you stick not to the timing that you're going to see in ACER's materials, which we'll talk about in a moment, but you stick to the official timing for your exam. 2 minutes per question for the sciences, 1.6 minutes per question for the non-science section, multiple choice section. Now, so there are trial questions, not scored. That means you don't know where they are. No one knows. People will talk about it after the exam. Oh, I think that was trial. I think that. You have no idea. These are statistical models. You just can't know. And less than half of the questions on the exam are new. What? That means most of the questions are old questions, also called link questions. And that allows them to do their statistical models as to the validity of the scores, because there's a large number of questions that the cohort would have seen that a previous one has seen as well. And they can look at what's happening, how are things changing, and so on. But still, this is compared to your performance on the new questions as well. That's all part of this, something called item response theory, which generates your scores. So your scores are going to be based on less than 50% new, mostly old questions. And then it generates a score. The scale is from 0 to 100. That's the scale. However, no one's getting that from 0 to 100. In fact, you can see here what the score really plays out to being. So it's 0 to 100 is scale, but almost no one gets over 80, and almost no one gets below 40. So almost everyone is scoring somewhere between 40 and 80. So the mean is 57. I know that some people say, oh, I passed the exam or something like that, or I failed. You can't fail GAMSAT and you can't pass GAMSAT. 50 has nothing to do with pass or fail. It's a scaled score, and the median score is 57. Now, what Acer talks about in Acer has some research articles on GAMSAT, and they don't talk about pass or fail because there's no percentage. You'll never know your percentage. You'll never know it. But you will be informed as to your scaled score, which is a comparative score based on this statistical model, and you will know your percentile, which is, you know, what percentage of students would have scored below you. So for example, if you scored a 63, usually a 63 would be 77 percentile. So a 63 is about 77. You have to add 34%, but 14. So 63 is about 77 percentile. And a score in the 60s, because we're not talking pass or fail, but a score in the 60s is what Acer calls in their papers TES, which is a typical entry score. Because it doesn't matter if you're in Ireland, UK, or Australia, you know there are medical programs that accept the 60, but to be a typical entry score, it's overall score of in the 60s, but no score below 50. So you can't get a score below 50, but an overall score in the 60s. So you know there's programs like that. Yes, there's Melbourne in Australia and Queensland and University of Queensland and University of Sydney, you know, that typically students are scoring in the low 70s to get it. But the majority of programs, it's in the 60s, majority of programs anywhere. And even at some of those schools that require really high scores, you know, there's some students who are coming from underserved areas and whatever, and there are certain circumstances such that other scores are acceptable. So there's a number in the 60s, which is what you are aiming for. And one of the things we have on our website, we do have a free full-length exam. Don't wait to sit it until you've completed your studies, and it gives you a scaled score. The scaling cannot be as perfect as Acer. Acer uses 15,000 students every year, but it's reasonable. Okay, so that's it about scores. The sections. I just want to underline one thing about the names of these sections. It's not called humanities and social sciences. It's called reasoning and humanities. It's not called biological sciences and physical science. It's called reasoning, and it makes all the difference. If you just study humanities or study biology, it's a disaster when you experience the real exam. They're testing how you think, not how much you remember or how much you know. So this is the antithesis to a normal undergraduate exam, where you study everything at home, you study your notes, you study the textbook, and then you go into the exam in undergrad, and the great majority of time, your score is only dependent on how much you studied. Did you study a lot, the notes and the textbook? Then you're covered. You're going to get a very good score. But this exam, it's not like that. Just the fact that you studied a lot, there's students who study an enormous amount. Then they sit the exam and they don't recognize what they studied in the exam. They don't see, why was I studying all of that? I don't see how it would have helped me for that. And that's when it's spending too much time studying information and not enough time in that uncomfortable position, constantly uncomfortable position of being presented with a scenario that you never heard of. You see, the point of most undergrad is you learn at home and then you reflect what you've learned when you go to the exam. But the point of GAMSAT is that you have some basic knowledge or information. Okay, we're going to teach you something new in the exam again and again and again. We're going to keep teaching you something new, and we're going to see how you're able to roll with that new information. So if you're not testing how you learn and how you are adapting to new situations on the fly, then it's it depends on if you just happen to be super charismatic and someone who had a lot of just natural insight into science. So the average person, it's 3 to 6 hours a day of studying for 3 to 6 months, and that's the ideal time. And you're all in a great position because you're all very early. But 3 to 6 hours a day for 3 to 6 months, that's the average person. Can someone study for 2 weeks and ace the exam? Of course. A person who used to write, essays, either in high school, secondary school, or in undergrad, and has done science, at least A levels, science, grade 12, first year university, certainly for organic chemistry. And as somebody who has that, those basic skills, but it's not that they scored very high necessarily in the science. It's that they always had insight into the problem. So they could sit in class and look at what the teacher's teaching, and they can predict where it's going. They can see. So they may not have the highest score, but they were always thoughtful about science. Okay, so those people can study for a couple of weeks and get a good score. But most people, it's 3 to 6 hours a day for 3 to 6 months. And even for some people, that might not be enough, because often it's because they're wasting time studying irrelevant information, and then they have to experience the exam again in order to sift out what's important and what's not important from their experience. So at least that gives you a basic idea about scoring. And in terms of preparation, while we're talking about that, so people have complained that ACER's materials are outdated, and so on and so forth. So there's something new on the horizon for you guys. So first of all, let's talk about their outdated. Let's first talk about their outdated content. So ACER has 5 booklets. They've had these booklets for years. One of the booklet, the first edition, was in the 1990s. 1990s. This is before 2000. This is this is an epoch ago in terms of GAMSAT years. And but the second edition came out, I think it was 2012. But these materials are old, but they're better than nothing. I know many students complain that it doesn't reflect the current exam. Okay, but you have to take steps before you start jogging and before you start sprinting. So ACER's older materials are still have value, and the oldest of their materials comes free, quote unquote, with your registration for the exam. So that's called GAMSAT Practice Questions. Now, these names are totally generic. The first one is GAMSAT Practice Questions. The second booklet is called GAMSAT Sample Questions. Ooh, very different. And then the third booklet is called GAMSAT Practice Test 1. Guess what the next one is called? GAMSAT Practice Test 2, and then GAMSAT Practice Test 3. So those are the 5 booklets ACER has. They vary in terms of the number of practice questions. The important thing is that you try to acquire them all. You try to stay according to the schedule of the 2024 exam, because the schedule that they have in ACER's own booklets, it's wrong. It's the old exam. And instead of having 1.6 minutes per question for humanities, it's 1.3 minutes. So you're going to run out of time, like most students did and complained about. And then for the science section, instead of 2 minutes per question, it was 1.5 minutes per question. Could you imagine half a minute less for an entire exam, that after the exam, it's like you've lost 30 minutes compared to what you guys have, which is extraordinary that you have that extra amount of time as compared to the traditional exam. So use ACER's materials, but use them according to the new schedule. Some of you know already, I put the step-by-step work solutions to all of ACER's Section 3 multiple choice questions on YouTube, and it's free. And it's also in your account if you have an account on GAMSATprep.com, and all the videos are there as well. So you can go, you're not going to be left in the dark when you go through ACER's materials. You'll always be able to get a step-by-step work solution. So you can see that at a Gold Standard GAMSAT YouTube channel. And so what's new? ACER just came out with something that's new. It's, of course, it's not free. And it's, they call it Online Practice Test 1. Oh, and another generic name. And so they have it for, they say biological sciences, but don't worry, it does mean reasoning in biological and physical sciences, and they have it for humanities, but don't worry, it's really reasoning in humanities and social sciences. So they have this new product, and unfortunately you can only sit the test once, and there's no detailed step-by-step work solutions and blah blah blah, but still very useful. And you shouldn't use it until you finish the booklets. Do the easy stuff first, and then expose yourself to that. So that's in response to people complaining that ACER is not up to date. And then ACER also has an online test generator, which is its most cost-effective product because it's a very reasonable price. It's like 20 Australian dollars, 13 pounds, 11 euros. So it's the most reasonably priced item, and you get 16 essays that you can write, submit, and it gets scored by AI. Yes, AI is going to take everybody's job, because for the real exam, your written communication essay is scored by 3 people. And then if there's a standard deviation difference between 2 scores, then a 4th person comes in as an arbitrator. But no, AI is able to score your exam as automation. And most students, I mean, probably 90% of students say that the score they got prior to their real exam using the generator was fairly accurate. Now, Gold Standard has an essay correction service with humans, professors correcting essays, and the comments are very useful and guiding comments for people to improve their scores. But I always tell students, the scaling score cannot be as precise as ACER, because that's why a score range is given instead of saying this is the score, which ACER is able to do because they have N is equal to thousands, tens of thousands, which is a completely different thing. And of course, some of you know about the, some of the Gold Standard materials. We're going to do some practice questions from a couple of the books today. As I'm almost done, ranting, and then we will, that there's a master series set of books that have a lot of practice questions, thousands of practice questions, and there's also a new book that has 15 full-length practice tests. It almost sounds impossible. So 15 full-length practice tests. There's 5 tests in the book and 10 different tests online. And this is, of course, on Amazon and all kinds of stuff. So those are full-length tests. So there are some, perhaps shady companies that will say they have so many tests and whatever, but, 10 questions in a test, 5 questions in a test, but these are 15 full-length tests. So with ACER's 5 exams and I'm not suggesting to anybody that you need 15 exams in order to do well in GAMSAT. Some might just need a handful and some might need more. But the objective is not to sit as many exams as possible. The objective is to sit exams in the circumstance of the real exam, either in the morning and the afternoon with the same break and same timing and whatever, repeatedly, and if possible, in the same room where you're going to be sitting the real exam with an online proctor. And so you experience the exam, and then you spend a minimum 1 or 2 days going in detail over the work solutions, where you got things wrong, how you can improve, where did the reasoning go, and don't use childish logic like, oh, if I see a question that looks like that, the answer is this. No, ACER does not play that game. You have to see how you learn on the fly, and then you start to develop the skill of, okay, how do I find my way through the forest, sort of look, because ACER is going to leave a breadcrumb trail. They're going to leave that trail for you, because there's not a hell of a lot, there's not a heck of a lot of knowledge that you need to have for this exam. It's mostly reasoning. So there's going to be sometimes there's a basic science concept, and ACER is explaining the basic science concept in the exam, because they don't want you to have to memorize that. They want to go on to something far more advanced than that basic concept. And they don't want the basic concept to be the thing that held you back. So sometimes they'll explain a basic concept, then go into detail on something far more complex. So how many times have you done that? How many times have you put yourself in a situation that you're uncomfortable? You don't know where to go. You don't know what's next. So that's what needs to be done repeatedly in order to develop that skill. And I'll often say that, you have to, ideally, you also develop a love of learning, because if you truly love learning, then that's more transferable to the exam itself. Okay, and then the last thing to say is that, you're going to get the results. The last thing is your result. Usually you get the results, sometimes 6 weeks later. So mid-May or late May for the March exam, mid-November for the September exam. That's when you get your results. And the results are in your online account. And if for Australia, you can use the result for 4 years, but currently for Ireland and the UK, it's still 2 years. So the 4-year thing was introduced a couple of years ago for Australia, and continues to be the case. So that's how long the scores will be valid. Okay, so that's enough blah, blah, blah. I don't usually do a lot of blah, blah, blah when we get together, because the focus, I like to keep it on the practice questions. So we have a handout. And so, if we can give the link to the handout, you can open it up. Let me know if there's any problem, or let G or Viv know if there's any problem for you to open up the handout. And if somebody's looking on YouTube, then it'll be in the description, the link to the handout. And the first page is just the breakdown of the topics of the exam. Of course, in future webinars, we'll be having a free webinar pretty much every 2 weeks. And the webinars will be problem-based, so less blah, 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 and more practice questions. And we're going to start going through some of the questions in some of ACER's oldest booklets. So if you've registered for the exam, you already have that booklet for free from ACER, and that's GAMSAT Practice Questions. And so we're going to start doing questions in there. We'll discuss the questions during the webinar, and then we'll go through the work solutions. And then I'll also present questions that are not in the booklet, that are novel for students who somehow they were either bored or it was too easy or something. Then we'll go next level on them, and I make sure that everybody learns from the experience. So it'll go from simple ideas and concepts up to more of the difficult possibilities. So first of all, we're going to look at some of the questions for the well, if you do the exam in Hong Kong, it depends on what you're using the exam for. So if you're using the exam for Australia, it's 4 years. If you're using for the UK or Ireland, it's 2 years. So yes, Deborah, we will post on the webpage which questions we're going to be doing during the webinar beforehand. But you have to understand, sometimes people show up and they just didn't do it. And it does not help that I just go through the work solutions if they haven't done it. So even during the webinar, it doesn't take long. It just take 10 minutes to do 6 questions. So I'll still allow the 10 minutes for the 6 questions before we do the work solution. So it's going to be like that. Okay. And yes, we also have 3-hour-long tutorials starting next weekend. And those go into obviously more detail in certain topics. But all of these things are going to be running in parallel. And okay, so yes, let's do some practice questions. So the first question is going to be for written communication. Why? Because written communication is the first section of the exam now. So let's do a written communication question. Please just get some A4 paper on your desk, as you will have for the real exam. And basically, I would like you to look at the topic and then see if you can come up with a title for the essay, or even some just basic ideas, introductory paragraph or whatever, but something very basic. But I'm just asking you to plan your essay. During the real exam, you will usually, if you have a good, clear plan for your essay, you'll spend 5 minutes planning your essay during the real exam. So that's what I would like to ask you to do. You have 4 comments, and this is the way it is for the real exam. Sometimes ACER calls them comments, sometimes they call them prompts. The idea is that the 4 comments will appertain to a common theme. So it's about something. The theme is not usually ambiguous. It's usually pretty clear. And so you're going to be writing your essay about the theme using one or more of the prompts to advance your ideas. So don't take a prompt out of context and just start writing as if it's not part of a context that's been presented to you. You're writing about the overall theme using one or more of the prompts or quotes in order to advance your work. So we're going to take a 5-minute clock, and you see comment set you in the second page of your handout. Comment set you, those 4 comments. You'll be planning your essay for that. Then we'll have a little chat about that. Then we'll do some multiple choice questions for section for non-science and science. So comment you. If anybody has any questions, you can do that. And by the way, for the tutorials, yeah, okay. Yeah, you've got all the information. So can we get a 5-minute clock, please? So I hope you have some scratch paper on your desk, and please begin now. Good luck. Okay, so just so that you know, we're going to discuss this just for a few minutes. Then we'll move on to one multiple choice question for humanities and two multiple choice questions for science. So that's the plan. Then we'll wrap things up. So just in case you have to run somewhere, I think we'll probably be another 20 minutes or 25 minutes, something like that. Okay, so let's get some of your ideas for this question. Does anybody have a title or a theme or something they want to bring up? Okay, so we have from Rachel. Poverty is one of the most serious dilemmas that destroy the society. Poverty means ignorance. It means sickness. Poverty destroys self-confidence, had an S in there, and breeds weak individuals unable to build a country or civilization. So, Rachel, I would say it's funny because you write well, like you said so many nice things, but perhaps you're just writing quickly, so there's just a couple of little technical issues. But you write well. I would say though, you've presented a very strong opinion. you know, and by the way, you don't get grades for being politically correct or politically incorrect. You will never get a score taken away for that. However, if you make a statement that poverty means ignorance or it means sickness or it breeds weak individuals, if you make a statement like that without backing that up with data, uh, you know, and I know you might say, well, that's hard to bring up data in an essay when you don't know the topic already. But that's the point, is that you need to have your preparation. So, for example, you watch some TED Talks. But it's not just that you watch the talks, is that you actually take notes, and so that you have access to data that you can bring up in order to provide evidence for your position. Because if you don't have evidence for your position, then that's where it becomes a problem. It doesn't matter about politically correct or not. Anyway, despite the existence of Centrelink, people still struggle as it's not a perfect system. Okay, that's reasonable. In 5 minutes, we need to work harder to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. Yes, Jonathan, and we would ideally you would have examples of where it was done and the gap was reduced. That you could actually say in this city, in this time, or you talk about a historical point or something like that. So by bringing up specific information, it makes it much more powerful. From Bianca, the change in mental health care over time and the impact this has had in a wider society. Yes, definitely that could be explored, and hopefully again you would have some data that you can bring up. I do want to put a little asterisk though. I'm talking about data, I'm talking about evidence-based arguments. That's very important. But some people do break the rules, so to speak, and they'll write a creative response to an essay, and big risk, potentially big reward. So I just want to mention that. I don't want you to think that there's only one way to write an essay. There's innumerable ways to do so. From Deborah, title, Cancel Out Looting. Let me get that. Cancel out looting before it begins. For example, US had looting during COVID, but Australia didn't with support payments. No, I think the idea is very good to explore that. However, once you start writing many essays, because before you sit the real exam, ideally you would have completed dozens and dozens of practice essays, your titles will get better, because the title that you wrote is too basic, so it's better to have a title that, first of all, you don't need a title. It's not mandatory. For me, a title is putting a frame around a painting. And so you get to frame your essay with your title, but not by giving it all away, but by, having. But we're going to have a tutorial on this anyway about section 2, and hopefully you'll develop some deeper titles, more meaningful. Welfare is a disputed concept and depicts ambiguity because it has different meanings for people in different positions in society based on their status and position of power. Yeah, I think that's absolutely a good, about the welfare state. And then, of course, you need to explore how wealthy people see, the poor on welfare, but some academics look at wealthy people who have tax subsidies, and that's a form of welfare as well. Okay, provision of wealth care for the individual, provision of resources to improve access to services, however, may result in decline of independence. Yes, classic argument. For the side, positive for economic growth, stimulate growth, development, negative change in supply, demand, change in economic markets. So, Daniel, those are a lot of good ideas. What about writing a news article, Deborah? Yeah, exactly. That would be a creative choice in which you write a news article about, or you can write as if you were writing in the opinion pages. Some people call it the editorial pages. So you're writing an opinion paper for a newspaper. So yes, either of those. Elbra, the poverty chain the government generates and its consequences. So Elbra, that's a beautiful title. From Ananya, welfare leeches giving. Welfare leeches giving. Oh, I don't know if you mean just those 3 words to be the title, but those 3 words are, yeah, that's a heck of a title. Welfare leeches giving. Yes, it's an interesting thing to explore. Resources equally not based on circumstance can create profit for the rich and can create dependency. Okay, look, I'm going to continue reading some of these while you guys do some multiple choice questions. So let's get you doing that. So so you're going to do a question. A multiple choice question is going to be number 15. So you'll have, technically you have 1.6 minutes. So that's a minute. And so how much should I give you? Because you don't really need that. I'll give you 80 seconds. So 80 seconds to do question 15, which is on your 6th page. So question 15. So can we get a clock with 80 seconds, please? Okay, and go. You can put your answer in the chat. Put your answer in the chat. Okay, so we do have some differing opinions about that question. I'm just going to write in the chat. Someone asked me for the recommended timing to type it. So it's for section 1, which is no longer called section 1, and 2 minutes per question for section 3. Okay, there we go. So that is the timing that will keep you safe. We'll be talking about that again and again and again over time. So, so this question, question 15, it's not hard or easy. It's a normal level, for GAMSAT. And I just wanted you to see there's no previous knowledge that you needed of Nietzsche in order to answer the question. And that's the way it is in the real exam. If you have experience doing reasoning in humanities and social sciences, of course that helps. If you're a person who reads a lot, of course that helps. If you have an arts background, of course that helps. However, these are things that you can learn over time. Now, it talks about chaos and a dancing star, but it says without chaos, how could one create a dancing star? Which means he's suggesting that you get creation from chaos. You can get a star, this amazing thing in the sky, that's dancing, in fact, from chaos. So you need chaos to have that. And so the question is the question is being in reverse, which is something Acer does all the time. Acer, one of the horrible, evil types of questions Acer has is Acer will talk about something in a passage and then ask a question about the opposite of what it was talking about. This is very common for Acer. Acer loves negatives. And so using processive elimination is very helpful for negatives, for double negatives. But you need to get accustomed to that. So this is clearly saying that chaos creates. That's what it's saying, and so chaos is not viewed with negative connotations. That's true. He's not viewing it negatively. He's saying that you can create from it. And these two ideas are linked. And it's actually necessary, because without chaos, he's saying, what other way could you get it? You need the chaos to create the dancing star. And the idea of chaos precludes creativity, there's no mention of that. All we know is that there's a link between this, and you need this to get that. Now, how did you get chaos? There's no discussion. So by the way, you also have the answer, the work solution to this, so you can read the work solution later. You can read the work solution. You have it in your handout. Okay, so that's section 1. We're going to look at the science section. But first, I want you, okay, so we're going to be doing 2 questions in here. But first, I want you to see what students have said about a subject that is not on the official subject list for this exam. So officially, for reasoning in biological and physical science, officially, the subjects are biology 40%, chemistry 40%, physics 20%. And the chemistry being equally divided between general and organic chemistry. So that's officially the topics for GAMSAT, reasoning in biological and physical sciences. But guess what? The unofficial topic, the number 1 unofficial topic, more than biology at 40%, more than chemistry at 40%. Read on. So when you start studying for this exam, if you go and pick up a biology textbook, good luck because you're going in the way wrong direction. It doesn't even matter if you're an engineer or a physicist. If you start with biology, you're going way off in the wrong direction. You have to go step by step. There's a certain order to the progress in science, and it starts with mathematics. Ideally, you start with math, and then you move from there to physics, from there to chemistry, because each builds on the other, and there from general chemistry, organic chemistry, because each builds on the other, and then finally with biology. In fact, biology is a subject you need to study least for, but you have to do as many practice questions in biology as you do for everything else, because so many biology questions are just graphs, tables, diagrams, equation manipulation. So it's the foundation is still in mathematics. So if you just jumped into the biology textbook or readings or practice questions, ACE or practice questions, you will find them very, very challenging if you don't have your foundation in order. So you want to get that house in order first. Okay, so we're going to look at two questions, those two practice questions. Okay, we don't have time to do question number 18. You can do it later. Okay, you can do question 18 later, but I really would like you to look at question 16, 17. But you could see that question 18 is a weird looking graph. I mean, it's not so difficult to figure out, but it's just for you to get used to the fact that you're always going to be presented with different looking graphs. Always. It's going to be different. It's going to be something unusual, or the question will be unusual. But for now, we're going to look at questions 16, 17. According to the exam timing, you have 2 minutes per question. So you're going to have 4 minutes to work out question 16, 17, and you can use anything you want. If you want to Google something, if you want to call a professor or call a friend, or whatever you need to do in order to try to come to a solution. And so can we get 4 minutes for the clock? And then you can put your answers in the chat for question 16, 17. If you have extra time, you can do the next question. Yeah, please start. Okay, so I think you guys, you've got it. You've gone through the work solution. I hope you've gone through the work solution. The work solution was on the last page. So I hope you've gone through the work solution. Um, Many of you, when you initially looked at those questions, would have gotten it wrong because you didn't notice the scale of the question. But I'm hoping the work solution is straightforward enough for you to see that the whole question was just based on whether or not you noticed that the scale was not linear. It wasn't going 10, 20, 30, 40, where the interval is always the same. It was going up by a factor of 10, and that makes all the difference in terms of interpreting that. I'll give you a little expression you can memorize for your real exam. Small changes on the upper part of an exponential scale are way more important than big changes at the lower parts of an exponential scale. So this is a little toy Acer plays with from time to time. So it'll readjust the way you analyze graphs. Later, you can do question 18. It's not very difficult, but it just presents a graph that many people have not seen before. But your Acer has many types of graphs that many students have not seen before. So it's helpful to go through that. So I'll say that again, Tash. Small changes at the upper part of an exponential scale are way more important than large changes at the lower part of an exponential scale. When I say important in terms of magnitude, I hope that makes sense, because the higher part of the exponential scale, the numbers are, it's millions, it's billions, it's trillions. But at the lowest part of the scale, the numbers are 5 and 20 and 100. So, yes. And of course, don't worry if you got those 2 questions wrong today. Who cares? The point is, you're not going to get those 2 questions wrong in March or in September. The point is to go through a lot of problem-based learning now so that you're able to get ahead later. So that's the main thing. So I just got a message about written communication, about using analytical essay for antithesis, but nothing is necessary because you can write a letter to your mother as your essay, or as mentioned before, a news article. So you can be creative. The point is that it's useful to know what the rules are. We will have a separate tutorial on essay writing, but it's useful to know what the classic rules are, which is thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. It's nice to know the classic rules, but you can break the rules in your essay. The number one most important thing is to go according to your strengths. Well, it is an essay. It is an essay, but does it have to be an essay? No, but it's still going to be labeled an essay. So some people will create a hypothetical conversation. Some people will write a play. I'm not kidding, a play or a poem. So, but it's still going to be called an essay because that's it's Acer's essay section, or written communication, more precisely. Okay, so that's it for today. Next time we're going to have our we're going to be once next weekend we're going to do the tutorial, 3-hour tutorial. We're going to start going into depth into certain sections and whatever. And the first one will be a get to know you session. And then we will have the free webinars every 2 weeks. And we're going to go into Acer's booklets, do some questions there, but I'll always bring some extra questions because I know that some students are very advanced and think that ACER's units are not strong enough for them. So I'll always bring some extra units, practice questions to do in our tutorial. So I'll choose some units and bring them in. And someone's going to put the link to the free tutorial. G will put the link in there so you can follow when the next one is. And I hope I answered Janeth's question. And yeah, so G, if you can put the link, yeah, there you go. So yes, you guys have the pass. So good luck with your studies. You're nice and early. If you keep this going, you can get to where you want to go. But you have to keep up that energy, keep up the focus. Don't study nonsense. And how do you know? How do you know if you're studying nonsense? Do practice questions. Then you know whether or not you're staying on track. Oh yeah, I forgot. There's a giveaway for some books over the next few weeks. So you can go to TikTok and find out about that. Good luck with your study and see you again next time. Bye for now.